Hey, it's Sam from Train of Thought here. Today we're going to be talking about management tip number 1, be vulnerable and fallible. Before we do anything, just make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. When we get promoted into a more senior position, when we become a manager, when we become more senior, a huge amount of our ego goes into that move. So the ego is the sense of self we have, this story we tell about ourselves. And it gives you a sense of saying, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this is who I am. Those are the kind of stories the ego tells. Now, when we get promoted, often we're in between two grades skill-wise. So we usually, say you go from manager to director, you're usually just too good to be a manager, you're kind of up there, but you're often not quite right at the director level, largely because you haven't been able to do the job fully yet. You're still doing the responsibilities down here. So you kind of sit in this in-between state. Now, the challenge for us is that what that makes us feel quite often is a level of insecurity. We're kind of in between. That we're not quite at that director's level. And what that can often throw up for us is a great deal of imposter syndrome. The belief that somehow we're not good enough for the job we're doing and that people will see through us. It's really common. We all have it. If you'll definitely have had it at some point in your life. From a management perspective, there's often a shortcut to try and overcome imposter syndrome. And it's something I definitely did when I first became a manager. And that is to try and show the world that you completely and utterly can do your job. In fact, you are so good at it that you really, really deserved it. You basically become this oracle of knowledge, this all-knowing, all-performing, aren't I brilliant at my job kind of person. It's a really easy way it's the initial way to try and overcome imposter syndrome is to try and be amazing at everything, to be perfect, so that no one could doubt you for a second or see through you. So as a manager, what quite often happens for a lot of us, and I was definitely one of them, is that I tried to be perfect. I tried to be so good at my job that my juniors would think, oh, they're definitely incredible. They're definitely better than I am. And therefore, they definitely deserve to be doing the job they're doing. Now, in theory, this sounds kind of all right. You're just trying to do your job really well. The problem is, from a management perspective, that it leads to some quite unhealthy behaviours and dynamics. Because if you're trying to be perfect, if you're trying to show the world that you're perfect, you're living that management role through your ego, and at this point, through a quite vulnerable ego. What you're trying to do is trying to prove to yourself that you're okay, that you're good at your job. It's all inwardly focused. And management is all about the other person. It's about loving and caring and really wanting the best for that other person. So the longer you are stuck in your ego and perfection, the harder it is to forge that relationship with the other person. Because you become essentially someone who's trying to defend themselves from negative thoughts. You become about preserving that ego. If your managerial technique is revolving around trying to show someone that you're good enough to do your job, everything you do will go into trying to feed that story, to try and tell yourself that you're doing a good job, which means there's a load of other stuff you won't be doing. It's much harder to listen when you're just inwardly focused. If someone comes to you with a problem and you don't know what to do about it, you're much more likely to be hostile and start to go, well, you should know. You're much more likely to just bark orders because you don't want to get into a conversation that you feel quite vulnerable about holding your own in. Often you can try and enforce yourself on other people. Just do it this way. Do it the way I do it. Because what you're actually trying to do is tell yourself that the way you think to do it is right. It's all about giving yourself control and defense against this very vulnerable ego. It can make you really unapproachable. It can make people find it very difficult to come to you. You set a really high standard that they can't quite live up to. They're never quite as good as you because you're showing off this zone of perfection. In short, by trying to protect your ego, it is very, very difficult to manage effectively. So what am I suggesting as an alternative? What I'm suggesting is having the strength and self-belief to be vulnerable, to make yourself vulnerable and let people know that you are learning. If you go to the video about the growth and fixed mindset, we talk about this. This need to be perfect is very much a fixed mindset. What you're trying to do is tell the world that you're good enough. With a growth mindset, what we're trying to do is tell the world that we are here to learn and get better. And part of getting better is accepting that we're not perfect now, that we need to grow and learn more things so we can be better. In management, I would say there's two areas in which it's worth applying this. One, to management itself. Communicate to your juniors that you are trying to be a better manager and you'd appreciate their help, that this is something you're going to do together. This is a relationship you're forging together and you are still learning and you will improve and you will do everything you can to do so. So that's number one. Let them know that you're being vulnerable and you're open to improving about the management you're doing itself. And then there's number two, which is be vulnerable about the work. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you have to know everything. It doesn't mean you have to answer every question immediately. It doesn't mean that you are always where the buck stops. If you're a manager, quite often you'll actually have a boss anyway. And it's perfectly reasonable to say, I don't know. In How to Win Friends and Influence People, he talks about I don't know being some of the sweetest words in the English language. We're so compelled to always be certain. And you can see the dynamics of this, not just in the workplace, but outside of it, this urge to always be right and certain. But the world's messy and complicated, and it's far too complex for us to know everything. Just if you don't know, it's okay to be open about that. And even say to your juniors, I'm not really sure. What do you think? When they talk about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the US president, they say that he wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but he surrounded himself with the smartest people. He possibly could. He just got the best advice and then he picked between it. He didn't pretend to be brilliant at everything. And most successful people don't pretend to be brilliant at everything. You have your strengths, others have theirs. Share in them. But to do so, you need to start from a position of vulnerability, understanding that you are not perfect. You never will be. That this ego defense to try and defend yourself is actually doing the opposite. It's holding you back from growing and getting better. Be okay failing as a manager. Be okay failing in your job, but be open, humble, and hungry to be better. And in that way, you'll continue to grow and you'll be able to grow as a manager who's flexible, who listens, who's there for their team. That's a really important start. To be a good manager, you do not have to be perfect. So start with a bit of humility and some vulnerability and fallibility. It's okay to fail, you're just improving. It's okay to not know everything, you're just one person. I hope this helps and sparks up some thoughts in your mind. Please let me know in the comments below your experience of management, any experience you've had with this kind of fixed, needing to be perfect. I had loads of it when I started managing, I can promise you that. Please hit that subscribe button, like the video if you did, share it if it's worth sharing. And until we meet next time, take care.